Let's start with the bad news. You all got cancer. The good news is you also got an immune system, and that's usually quite capable of preventing those cancer cells from growing in your bodies. Sometimes it's not enough, and that's where immuno-oncology comes into play. It's been extremely successful. It will save millions of lives. Still, in the end, almost a third of us will die from cancer, unless therapy improves further, and that's what Alligator is here to do. We are developing the next generation immuno-oncology agents, tumor-directed immunotherapies. This is drugs that more activate the relevant part of the immune system rather than general immune activation. All with a point to actually focus immune attack towards the tumors and to reduce systemic side effects. Here we are pioneers. We have a pipeline of 4 antibody-based products within that niche, within preclinical and clinical development. And the quality of that pipeline has been validated by the deal with Johnson & Johnson, the world's largest healthcare company. Based on the upfront payment from that deal, milestones, and also successful share issue at our IPO in 2016, we today also have a very sound financial situation, with money in the bank for the next 3 years. Our success factors are twofold. On the one hand, we have a very strong technology platform. We have all the technologies internally we need to develop the next generation bispecific antibody-based products. The other factor is a strong R&D environment. Of the 50 people at Alligator, 43 are within R&D, 2/3 have a PhD and long experience in immuno-oncology. We were founded based on this technology, FIND protein evolution technology, in 2001. Many of those people are still in the company. But the most important factor here is a strategic decision taken in 2008, where Alligator decided to start immuno-oncology. This is about 5 years before immuno-oncology was generally accepted. That's why we today stay with a pipeline that's extremely competitive on a global perspective. 1013 was out-licensed to Johnson & Johnson in 2015. In 2016, 1015, a first-in-class product, entered preclinical development, and last year, 2 more products, 1017 and 527, entered preclinical development. And all of them are within immuno-oncology. Immuno-oncology is extremely successful and is also reflected in sales. Here, from the first approval in 2011, first it was quite slow due to the side effects. Then in 2015 it was taking up speed, the PD-1 blockers entering the market. One interesting factor here, in 2015, still the sales were almost exclusively in malignant melanoma. And that's important because malignant melanoma is around 1% of the mortality in cancer. Then in 2015, it was also approved in lung cancer. And that's the reason for the increase in sales. In 2016, 2017, it's around twice that amount. And within the next 5 to 7 years, it will be between 30 and 50 billion US dollars alone. Here we are strongly differentiated. Alligator are developing tumor-directed immunotherapies. What's approved today is general immune activators. They activate the full immune system, extremely effective, but also quite toxic, due to the fact that overactivation of the immune system may lead to attack on normal tissue around elsewhere in the body. What we do is a more selective activation of the relevant part of the immune system. So we try to activate the immune system in the actual tumor area. And we have a number of different concepts to do that. And one very particular concept is to engineer bispecific antibodies. Those antibodies can be made up from 2 different therapeutic antibodies, one with an immune activating entity and one with a tumor targeting entity. We fuse those into one super compound that can be injected in the circulation, and it will actually circulate throughout the system until it reaches the tumor, where the tumor targeting antibody will make it stay. So it will accumulate in the tumor area and activate the immune system where it should. The other factor we've done is to engineer that antibody so it's inactive while circulating. It actually won't activate the immune system until the binding to the tumor. So the binding to the tumor is a trigger to activate the other part of the molecule, which is the immune activating part. And I'll come back to that. We have a strong pipeline within this niche. 1013 in clinical phase 1, partnered with Johnson & Johnson, Janssen Biotech. 1015 is a first-in-class product. Here we are first in the world with this product, and it entered clinical phase 1 this year. And then 2 more products on the 4-1BB target. They are entering clinical trials next year. So let's take a look and start with 1013. Here is an attempt to describe the mechanism of action. And it's in one way extremely complicated, but it's also quite simple. So 1013 activates CD40 as a receptor on antigen-presenting cells. Immune system has essentially only 2 different parts. One is a part telling the immune system what to attack. It's like a billboard, and that's the antigen-presenting cells. And the other part is a police function. They execute the attack, and that's the T cells. And immuno-oncology is the interplay between those 2 cell types. The antigen-presenting cells will show what to attack. The billboard will show the tumor antigen on the surface. Then if we add 1013 activating CD40, that will make the billboard light up and much more clearly show the message. This is a non-self foreign agent that should be attacked. So if we look at that communication in more detail, antigen-presenting cells, T cells, and this is the interplay between those 2 cell types. Here, the tumor part is demonstrated to the T cell. The T cell will recognize this part and get the message, this is a non-self, it should be attacked. But the T cell will put a control question. Is it dangerous? And that question is answered by all those different modulating signals. The red signals tells the T cell it's not dangerous. And that will terminate the attack. There will be no attack. This is the same signals that the tumor used to escape the immune system. So the tumor will be detected by the immune system, but it will also send a signal, well, I might be non-self, but I'm not dangerous, and there will be no immune attack. We must block those signals. Here you have PD-1 blockers, CTLA-4 blockers, already approved on the market. The other kind of signals tells the T cell that it is dangerous and they should execute an attack. That's the green signals, and there will be an immediate immune activation. We have a focus on the green signals, but we actually work with both today. CD40 is unique in one aspect. If you look at those signals, those receptors, actually all those targets are in clinical development today, many in quite late clinical stage, and some on the market like PD-1, CTLA-4. But all of them are directed towards the T cell to activate the T cell, which is a police function. There's only one signal specific for the antigen-presenting cell, and that is CD40. It's not better than activating the T cells, but it's a complement. So you can activate both populations and get a stronger total effect. That's why I have potential for synergy and combination therapy. And immuno-oncology will be combination therapy going forward. Competition, yes, quite a lot. And this is not even a complete figure. What we have done here is to actually take away all the PD-1 compounds that are not in phase 3. And there are about 20, 25 more such compounds here. Every large company will have their own PD-1 in a few years. But if we look at the other targets, CD40 is one of the key targets. We have 5 competing companies here. We have benchmarked quite extensively. And to make it quite simple, the 2 strongest antibodies are the Alligator compound and the Roche compound. But there is one key difference. We have made our compound tumor-directed, meaning that it is more active in the tumor area. And we have also been able to demonstrate that we have a much better toxicity profile. And this was actually the data that convinced Johnson & Johnson to in-license a project. in 2015, and is now since to be confirmed in clinical trials. We have completed one clinical trial that was run by Alligator. It was completed in 2017. We had 24 patients enrolled, 5 clinical sites, Sweden, Denmark, UK. And essentially it confirmed what we were out for, to demonstrate that we have safe and good tolerability at clinically relevant doses, which is very important to the target CD40 because the fact that Roche has had immense problems with toxicity. This is not the key phase 1 study, however, because we did a dose escalation by injecting into the tumors. And Johnson & Johnson then started a second phase 1 trial by injecting directly into the circulation, and that's still ongoing. In November, they had dosed more than 50 patients, and they continued dosing since. They are planning for expansions as a monotherapy, but they also, as we communicated a few months ago in January, they will also start now combinations with PD-1 and start first looking at safety and then expanding to efficacy. And just to comment that Johnson & Johnson through Janssen Biotech are now running all future clinical development, so we cannot give forward-looking statements on that product anymore. Then to our next internal program, 1015. As I said, we are first in the world with this product. Immuno-oncology will be combination therapy going forward. Here we have a combination therapy in one molecule. It's made up of an OX40 targeting antibody fused to a CTLA-4 blocking antibody. This was the first target approved in immuno-oncology. And it's designed actually to be combined further with PD-1. It's actually designed specifically to add what PD-1 is lacking. So PD-1, extremely good at activating the immune system, but then you have suppressive mechanism to avoid overactivation. There will also be so-called regulatory cells, reducing the immune activation. And CTLA-4 and OX40 specifically take away those control mechanisms, regulatory cells. And that's why, probably, CTLA-4 today is still the only target that has demonstrated clinical synergy with PD-1. That's well documented, extremely effective together with PD-1, but also extremely toxic. And what we have made here again is a tumor-directed compound. We will actually direct the CTLA-4 blockade to the tumor area through this compound. And we have quite nice data to demonstrate that today. But it's not only actually activating 2 different immune pathways. They're also put together in one molecule, and that adds another dimension. I tell you why. What we can do by having them in the same molecule is actually physically attach immune cells to each other and increase cell-to-cell communication. And we have demonstrated that quite clearly. 1015 will make increased cell-to-cell crosstalk between CTLA-4 and OX40 expressing cells. This is just to demonstrate that it happens, but the next slide is important. It shows it has very strong synergy. This is a key mechanism of action. It's to take away the suppressive mechanisms of the immune system, the regulatory T cells. And just to make it short, the blue line is by giving both OX40 and CTLA-4 antibodies. Then you can give a quite good effect. But 1015, where you have those targets in the same molecule, the effect is 3- to 4-fold better. And it's also reflected in actual efficacy. Here is a tumor model, bladder cancer. Treating with 1015 will cure about 65% of the mice in this therapy. That's very impressive, but the most impressive fact about immuno-oncology is the fact that those mice that are cured, they will remain protected against the tumor. They will be immune for the rest of their lives, probably. We have demonstrated that many times, and they're always immune. In this, on the right-hand side, we have taken it one step further. Here, we have cured the mice from a bladder cancer, waited 2 months, no further treatment. And then we re-challenge with the bladder cancer and a completely different cancer, in this case, a pancreatic cancer. The immune system will not recognize the pancreatic cancer. and it will grow quickly and eventually kill the mice. But the immune system will remember the bladder cancer, and the cancer cells are immediately killed off by the immune system. And that is the beauty about immuno-oncology and why the patients continue to live year after year once the immune system had the better part of it. Here it's what looks like a dull slide, but it's actually the most important. What we do here is take the tumors from the mouse that were treated, and then we look at the immune activation in the tumors. We can increase immune activation. This is immune cells by OX40, by CTLA4, but as you can see, 1015 is far, far better. But the very most important part is on the right-hand side. The fact that in other immune organs, this is a spleen, there is no activity at all. So we have actually been able to focus the immune activation to the tumor with no activation in the rest of the body. And if we can confirm that in the clinic, we have a blockbuster potential. Basically, we already know today that PD-1 and CTLA4 is synergistic. Despite the tremendous toxicity of CTLA4 from ipilimumab, it's still selling for about $1 billion a year, even if most patients can't tolerate the combination. If we can demonstrate that we have CTLA4 block without the toxicity, we have an absolute blockbuster product. And that's only in melanoma today. It's now tested in lung cancer as well, and in renal cancer it's already approved. But this is probably our most important asset, and it enters clinical trials later this year in the autumn. Just a few words on our other products. 1017 is a 4-1BB targeting antibody. 4-1BB is a quite important T-cell activating receptor. And here we have developed the best-in-class product. Essentially, 4-1BB is associated with quite severe toxicity as well. Again, we have made an antibody which is tumor-directed, more active in the tumor area, and we hope to come around that problem with the toxicity and have a strong 4-1BB effect without toxicity. We have competitors, BMS and Pfizer. They are already in phase 1, but we think we have a better product, and we will enter clinical phase 1 in cancer patients next year. And then we're taking it one step further in the next product. 527 is a co-development program, 50-50 co-development with Aptevo Therapeutics in US. We have a bispecific product binding both to the tumor cells and activating the immune system. And here we have a product that can circulate inactively in the body until it reaches the tumor, and then it will accumulate in the tumor and activate the immune system there and only there. So let's go on to the financial situation. Very briefly, we had at the end of the last year $67 million US, around a bit more than 500 million Swedish kronas in the bank. And the burn rate last year was 120 million Swedish. Cost will increase, but even with a growing pipeline and increase in costs, that will take Alligator at least 3 years ahead, even if we shouldn't receive any more milestones. And we do expect more milestones next year. On the shareholder list, there has been a few changes. Still the largest owner, Banque Internationale Luxembourg. We have Johnson & Johnson, and we have Sunstone. But as you can see, Duba, the investor-owned Duba, has sold off all their shares over the last 6 months, almost 5 million shares. A quite significant part has been taken up by US healthcare specialist. It's not Goldman Sachs, it's under their name, but they're not public with their asset yet. And then the other part has been taken up also actually by a German healthcare specialist. So all in all, we have a very strong shareholder list. One more point is the management team. With a growing pipeline and a growing company, we have also increased the management team and added one head of discovery to take care of our early investments in new products. And also we have recruited a new chief medical officer, Charlotte Russell, who is heading our clinical development. And starting in 1 month, we also have a head of business development joining, Anu Dharam from AstraZeneca. So I'd just like to conclude with a final slide. We are today building a solid clinical pipeline at Alligator. 1013 is in late phase 1. 1015, we're first in the world with this bispecific dual immune activator. We'll enter clinical phase 1 in cancer patients in the autumn. And next year, 2 more products, but all with a first-in-class potential, will enter clinical phase 1 trials in cancer patients. And with that, we are well on our way to establish Alligator as a key player within our niche of immuno-oncology, tumor-directed immunotherapy. Thank you.
Thank you, Per. Very interesting to hear. I find it particularly interesting that you're here today, being one of quite few, actually, Swedish companies who have licensing deals in place.
Yep.
How did that change your companies?
It has changed a lot. I think like most biotech companies, we spent the first 15 years begging for money every year. And while that worked quite well, we did actually develop 1013, but also it made it more difficult to make long-term investments and to build on completely new concepts. I think by that we have gotten first credibility, both locally and internationally. They know we can develop high-quality drug compounds, but also a very stable financial situation. So it's all for the better, I would say.
Yeah, and having this established partnership, does it also attract other companies to you as well, as far as being contacted by others who want to know what you're doing?
Yeah, I think it is quite difficult to establish US collaborations without having something real behind you. And I think that agreement with Johnson & Johnson, that was instrumental for the Aptivo deal as well. Or deal, it's a co-development program, but we are there, we are discussing on equal terms with the US companies today.
And you were saying earlier, as far as the financing go, you're well financed, one should say. Yeah. Being in a partnership where potential milestones coming in, does this mean that from an investor point of view, you're kind of immune against the eternal fear of new share issues?
In a way, I mean, as long as the programs develop according to plan, we are immune. With the expected milestones from 1013, we will not have to make further share issues. But I mean, as a company, we're planning it on the safe side, so we assume that we will have no more milestones, and we still then will have at least 3 years spending. But obviously, we expect milestones already next year, so it's a good situation to be in. It's a good situation, indeed. And counting from the point where you were introduced to the Swedish stock market, becoming a public company, you've been working with your development programs, you've expanded your pipeline, and at the same time, in parallel, the actual stock price, if I look back at the curve, doesn't look so funny. I mean, obviously you might not want to comment on the share price. I think it's a valid question, and I would say it does not reflect any issues with the pipeline. So we have actually been more successful the last few years than ever before. Yeah. We have delivered on all we said we would deliver on in our IPO. But we should also remember that at the IPO there were people who has invested in Alligator for the last 15 years, and at that time they actually made a very good return on their investment. So I think there has been pressure from old owners selling. Hopefully we have seen the end of that now, but that's the explanation I can give. Yeah. So this is a point where the graph goes up again, perhaps. That's what we all hope for. Yes. Do we have any questions from the audience? In Swedish is okay, if you want. You have said it all. So you will get questions though from Tobias, our analyst, in a few moments. But for this time, I thank you very much for coming. Thank you.